and this is Ricardo, Middleton, and we're going to be talking to you about all sorts of fantasy football advice, getting you ready for the drafts, getting you through the season, and just kind of addressing all the main talking points about fantasy football.
Fantasy football fans everywhere, lend me your ears. It's what some of us like to refer to as Christmas in September. 2015 fantasy football. Now we've got off-season out of the way. We've seen 4 preseason games, so we should pretty much be pretty set on who we want to draft this year. Me and Ryan, we're going to talk about some fantasy busts, sleepers, and a couple more facts here and there that might help you get the championship this year. Okay, so we want to get the negatives out the way, and I'd first like to start out with my most outlandish bust. Here it goes. AJ Green. Ryan, what do you think about AJ Green?
I think AJ Green is still a top 5 receiver in the league. I think when healthy, his consistency has not wavered. I think Andy Dalton is the most average quarterback in the league. But
all factual.
But that'll still lead to AJ Green getting his targets. He's probably debatable, but maybe the most sure hands in the league. When it's catchable, he can get there. And I think if you draft him kind of at any point, you can't go wrong with drafting AJ Green, having him on your squad. So.
Okay, I'm of a different frame of mind when it comes to AJ. I see him getting drafted in the first round late, second round early, and I think that's too valuable a pick on a receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals. They've got a lot of receivers. They're pretty deep with Marvin Jones, Sanu. They've got a tight end, Tyler Eifert, and Gio's coming back, and we know he likes to eat up a lot of those targets. Andy Dalton is an average quarterback, which means dump-offs are his friend. And although AJ is a pretty short-handed security blanket, I think those targets are going to be divvied up a little bit more this season. So I'm thinking AJ's a great value in the 3rd round, and if, by God, if he slips to 4, I mean, that's a no-brainer. But 1st, 2nd, I'm hedging my bets on someone else.
Yeah, I think with that, that's something we'll discuss later, is kind of draft strategy and when to draft receivers versus running backs and tight ends and a bunch of stuff we'll get into later. But I think if you're in probably a points per reception league, I don't think there's a time you can go too early with AJ. I think if you're late in the 1st round, middle 2nd round, it's still a good spot to take AJ. If the other the top receivers are off the board, AJ is one to go for.
Okay.
And I think with all the receivers that you named in Cincinnati, if anything, I think that can benefit him. It's always kind of talked about of, being the only receiver on your team and how you're going to get all the attention from the defense. But with all those different targets that Cincinnati has, it'll open up a lot for him, a lot more one-on-ones. Dalton's going to look AJ's way first. And I think if he sees AJ in any type of one-on-one, it's going there. So that's another thing to look at with AJ.
It's a fair point. Okay, let's get to our 2nd bust. Not going to be popular at all. Odell Beckham Jr.
I'll go ahead and start with Odell, and this for me more stems from his quarterback. And with Cruz coming back, Odell there, Ruben Randall, they have a very deep receiving core, kind of much like Cincinnati. But I think with in Odell's case, that works to his detriment. I think with Eli throwing the ball, Eli's more erratic than even Andy Dalton. Not saying he's a worse quarterback, but you get the consistency with Dalton, as previously mentioned. With Eli, he's going to chuck it a lot, but when that happens, you don't necessarily know where that's going to go. So I'd say, are less catchable. Odell has shown that he can catch the most uncatchable of balls, but I just feel like being drafted, it looks like the 4th receiver off the board, again, probably late first round, early second. I wouldn't put as much faith in Odell Beckham as I do in AJ Green, just based on the quarterback situation. So less faith in Eli than I do in Dalton, which is dicey, but
yeah, well, I'm of the same train of thought. I think Odell benefited a lot last year from the absence of Cruz. We all know Cruz is one of Eli's favorite targets, and with Ruben Randall actually coming in the close second, I think Ruben serves as a pretty decent security blanket for Eli Manning. And Odell's 91 catches last year was great, but with Cruz coming back, with Ruben Randall still there, Larry Donnell, tight end, those targets are going to be divvied up a little bit more, and we'll see what happens with Odell, but I don't like him in round 1. Sorry.
I agree.
Plus number 3. I think I've got a few supporters on this one. Jeremy Maclin of the Kansas City Chiefs. And it's not a knock on Maclin because we all know what he did with Philadelphia last year. Great receiver, speedy, change of direction, everything. But he's going to a situation where not a single touchdown catch was caught by any of the receivers in Kansas City. Andy Dalton likes tight ends. He likes catch-passing running backs, but he didn't really show his receivers much love. Dwayne Bowe figured that out and got out of a bad situation. And that's what Jeremy Maclin is running into himself right now. Your thoughts?
I think with Maclin, the history of Kansas City receivers is terrible. There's zero touchdowns, you mentioned. But to that, I don't think they had a receiver that great. So I don't believe that, Dwayne Bowe at this point in his career, I don't really feel that he was worth being a number 1 receiver. So Jeremy Maclin, he's young, he's fast. I think Alex Smith is going to look for him a lot. So I think based on pure volume alone, that he's going to add up. His numbers will accumulate. Looks like he's going probably 5th, 6th round, depending on how many teams in your draft. I'd say looking like 22nd receiver taken, so he's above Sammy Watkins, Brandon Marshall, under Julian Edelman, DeAndre Hopkins, Jordan Matthews. I'd probably pick him over a few of those guys. I don't know. I think Alex Smith again.
Who would you pick him over in that list?
I would take him over.
Please.
I'd take him over Hopkins. I'd take him over all of those.
Over
all right?
Hopkins?
I would take him over
Who's going to receive all the targets from Brian Hoyer?
From Brian Hoyer, who will pass about 20 yards tops. DeAndre Hopkins can't run a route under 20 yards. I would put that. So, with that, I'd probably take Maclin over. I'd probably take him in the top 15 based on some of these other receivers that I believe are actually getting overdrafted.
Okay, that's fair. Only one I'd take I take Maclin ahead of is maybe Deshaun, and that's just because of the terrible quarterback situation.
I'd take everyone over Deshaun Jackson for the record, so
in Washington.
So that I'm not even gonna.
But I mean, if you look at Alex Smith's track history, I mean, in Kansas City, it's all Jamal Charles. In San Francisco, that's why Frank Gore was such a viable option, was because Alex Smith loves to pass to running backs. And I mean, if nothing is more evident than 0 touchdowns by wide receivers, then I mean, in PPR you might get away with having a few games where there's a lot of receptions by Jeremy Maclin, but is he going to get in the end zone? That's the question. And his value to me is more in the 9th, 10th round. But we're looking at average draft positions, and he's in the 4th and 5th, and I think that's way too high for a Jeremy Maclin.
All right, so the 4th player on our list of busts, we're going to go over Peyton Manning. There's a lot of debate about Peyton Manning, about if he can keep going, if his career is kind of on the tail end. I'm of the stance that he's got at least 1, maybe 2 more good years in him. the receiving core, if anything, with Peyton Manning, with him, I think that's gonna help him more than anything. He's still got Demarius, Emmanuel Sanders. He still has the accuracy that Peyton Manning it's always been a trademark of him. So I think with those receivers, with the Peyton Manning accuracy, so his balls look like ducks every now and then, but it'll get to the target. I think that's the most important part with Peyton Manning. I think he's going to accumulate over 4,000 yards, over 30 touchdowns, and I think that's enough to merit his number 3 quarterback rating fantasy.
Well, you say the biggest knock on Peyton is the velocity of his throws. What about his age? What about his durability throughout the course of a 16-game season?
Degenerative neck, yeah.
I mean, I've got a stat here saying that through the last 5 games, I mean, he only threw for 240 passing yards over 5 games. That's roughly 60 yards a game, which also accounted for 0.8 touchdowns a game and 1.2 interceptions a game. So he's getting a lot less accurate as the season goes on. And I mean, at the advanced age of 39, does that get any better? I mean, yeah, he's had an off-season of rest, but is rest the same at 39 as it was at 29? I'm not of that thought. So Peyton being drafted as the 3rd quarterback, I mean, maybe draft him early and try to dump him mid-season, because we all know how Peyton declines throughout the course of the season.
Yeah, to that point, I'll agree with Peyton. I still think draft him early, but if anything, after a good 3 or 4 game run, if you can sell him off, do that. Sell high on Peyton Manning, but I think that he'll be good enough still to go ahead of the Russell Wilson, Matt Ryan, Matt Stafford. Okay, so number 5 bust on our list. It's actually number 1 for me. It's going to be Russell Wilson, Seahawks quarterback. My reasoning for is being so against Russell Wilson. Where do I start? I mean, I'll start with draft position. He's being drafted as the number 4 quarterback. Fantasy-wise, that comes from his consistency passing the ball. He's safe with the ball. He gets yards on the ground. Fair enough. That same argument, for the most part, could be made for Cam Newton, yet he's being drafted as the 11th quarterback. Russell Wilson, he's going to get you, I don't even know how many yards he's going to get you in the air. But to be drafted over the likes of one of my personal favorites, Phillip Rivers, Cam Newton, as previously mentioned, Tom Brady, Romo, Breeze, Roethlisberger, I'd all take them ahead of Russell Wilson. Just based on they're going to get you more numbers, they're going to get you more touchdowns, they're going to get you more passing yards. They'll have more interceptions, but I think over the course of the season it'll even out or it'll balance out for more points for these other guys. And Russell Wilson, to draft him as the 4th overall quarterback, that's just too high for my liking.
I wholeheartedly disagree. From experience, Russell Wilson is a pretty safe bet at quarterback. He's not going. There's going to be few games where he gets you less than 10 points. For the record, he threw for 3,500 yards last season. Got you 20 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions. But the rushing is very important. 850 yards on the ground last year, which accounted for 5 touchdowns. Sorry, 6 touchdowns. He's a pretty safe, sure thing, in my opinion. I mean, not a bust. I mean, you look at those other quarterbacks, they're throwing a lot of picks, they have fumbles. I wouldn't say Cam Newton is quite as consistent as Russell Wilson on a week-to-week basis. And, I mean, if you play in leagues where you're getting bonuses for 100-yard games, Russ had a couple of those last season, and those are going to start to add up. Now he's got Jimmy Graham, a big goal line target. I see Russ actually propelling himself to higher heights this season. So bust, not at all. I mean, I would draft him anywhere from 3 to 5, and he's being drafted as the 4th quarterback off the board. And actually, I'd put him ahead of Peyton.
Yeah, it looks like he's going. Yeah, 3 to 5 is about the range that he's being drafted. Even with that, I say he's more of a high floor, low ceiling player. So you say you think he's going to ascend. His numbers are going to go get higher this year. I disagree with that. I think that if anything, they're going to decrease. They're going to keep it on the ground more. Jimmy Graham will account for more check downs, if anything. He doesn't have a wide receiver that can stretch the field for him, and he's not going to throw it deep anyways. So, if anything, I think that he's reliable if you can get him in the middle rounds. 6 or lower is where I would take him. But if he's going 2, 3, 4, 5, then I'm not touching Russell Wilson at those positions.
I mean, what about Jimmy Graham after the catch, though? I mean, albeit a check down, but have you seen that man with a ball in his hand?
I am a huge fan.
A
huge fan of Jimmy Graham and his potential in this offense. But I think that'll be bigger for Jimmy Graham than it will for Russell Wilson. So I think having that as an option, Russell Wilson's interceptions will still stay low. That's not going to change. He's a very safe quarterback. But I say safe in the sense of, an Alex Smith, Andy Dalton, who's not very dynamic when passing. He's reliable, but not worth a high draft pick. I think Breeze is going to have a bounce back year. Roethlisberger is going to keep adding on to his numbers. Romo, if he can get any type of consistency, throw to Dez a little bit more. Stafford, well, he's going to throw a lot of interceptions, but I wouldn't take, probably not Stafford, but I think with Russell Wilson, my main point is just that he's a safe pick, but when you're talking top 5 rounds as far as I'm concerned, you're looking for, you want your points to come from there. So you don't just want to say, if you got to take some risks in those top rounds, and there's no risk with Russell Wilson.
I think no risk. And Jimmy Graham opens up the field for 3 other receivers. And I think with Jimmy Graham there, we're going to see Russell's pretty accurate deep ball unleashed this year. So I say 3 to 5. My partner says below 6. We'll let the season show. Okay, football fans, now we're going to talk about some of the fantasy sleepers. Everyone wants to find that diamond in the rough, that gem in late rounds, and that actually wins championships more than anything. Trying to find the Tim Hightowers of the world. Hello. Which brings us to our first fantasy sleeper. This guy is going undrafted in most leagues, and I don't know why. Well, there's good reason. I mean,
I do.
He's a Redskin tight end
Set it off.
who's in a pretty bad situation with, uncertainty at the quarterback position, although Kirk Cousins has been named the starter. But Jordan Reed deserves to be drafted, even if he's a late round 14, 15 pick. Grab him up and stash him. He's on a team where there is no tight end. Logan Paulson, down. Niles Davis, down. And, the biggest knock on him, of course, is his health, which, it is a big thing, but, late round 14, 15, you're looking for sleepers anyways. So his value to me at those picks is really high. Of the 10 games he did play last year, he grabbed up 50 receptions and 500 yards. So the potential's there, and if he can stay healthy throughout a 16-game season with no tight ends to throw to other than himself, they've got Pierre Garçon, they've got Deshaun Jackson, but I think he's a viable option, and I wouldn't sleep on it.
As far as late round flyers go, there's very few players I can really disagree vehemently with. So if, in the 14th, 15th round, if he's there, and if you believe in Kirk Cousins even a little bit, then I mean I say take a chance. But I mean just against him, the biggest thing against him is Kirk Cousins, is Deshaun Jackson, Pierre Garçon there. I feel like they're big play threats. The Redskins are going to be down a lot. They're going to need big plays. Kirk Cousins, hasn't proven to be the safest with the ball, so I think he's going to chuck it a lot, and he's going to look for those two receivers. So that's my only disagreement against it. But as a late round flyer, tight end's a very, very top heavy position. So once you get past probably the top 8, you're almost at flyers already. So if he's there, if you're okay with Kirk Cousins as your quarterback, possibly Robert Griffin III at some point, go for it.
You don't sound old.
I don't know. Not even a little bit.
I mean, even the pinch hit during one of your top tight ends bye weeks, maybe at the flex whenever your flex guy goes down. I think Jordan Reed has potential, and mark my words, he's not going to be on the waiver wire for long.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to flyers at the end, you're looking for potential. He does have that, so go for it. All right, so the next sleeper that we're going to talk about is going to be Sam Bradford, quarterback for the Eagles. The biggest point that I want to make with Sam Bradford and why I believe that he's a sleeper and someone who should be drafted probably as your second quarterback on your team is the offense around him. Chip Kelly's offense is a proven system. I'm a believer in Chip Kelly's offense, of what he's done in college, what he's done these first 3 seasons with the Eagles. It might be more of a knock on the quarterbacks, but I'm a believer that you can kind of plug in any quarterback into his system and they're going to produce numbers. Sam Bradford had the reason that Sam Bradford was drafted, number one, is because of his productivity in the spread offense in college. He didn't have that with St. Louis. He had injuries, of course. But going back to the spread offense, going with Chip Kelly, who's probably one of the brightest minds in the coaching of the NFL teams, I think it'll benefit Bradford. He's got options to throw to. He's got DeMarco. He's got a running game that'll take the heat off of him, so the teams won't be able to stack up against him. So all of this, I say, would bode well for him. Really as a fill-in quarterback if you need one, if you can't get one of the top guys, or even if you have to ride with Bradford, if you have a deep league with 16 team leagues or something, I say you can't do much. You can do worse than Sam Bradford.
I'm going to take it a step further. I'm good with Sam Bradford being my quarterback 1. He can make all the throws. That's never been an issue. His only issue has been health with Sam Bradford. I mean, sure, his St. Louis, the offense they ran in St. Louis wasn't quite as catered to him, but his throwing ability, his ability to make every throw has never been questioned. And, I mean, if Sanchez can thrive in that offense, I think Sam Bradford takes it to another level. So, I mean, in my opinion, you can draft Sam Bradford any time after round 7 and get away with it because, I mean, he's dropping all the way to rounds 10, 11 in certain leagues, and people are using him as a backup. I'm of the thought that Sam Bradford might be one of the top quarterbacks this year in fantasy. Bold prediction? I don't know. We'll let Chip Kelly decide that. Fantasy football fans, we'll be back with you in a couple of days so we can talk about sleepers, a couple of other fantasy potpourri, just, giving you advice, helping you get through your leagues, hopefully translating to wins.
Thank you guys for watching. We look forward to continuing the discussion on fantasy football. It's a lot that can be touched on. We'll be back with you in a couple of days. All right?
As Brian said, I'm Ricardo Middleton, and we're here for your fantasy football needs. Ask us any questions. We'll be giving advice throughout the season. Happy trails.